Hello my lovelies, today I will read you a fanfiction called Vinum. It was written by Striker Sky and it's the first book of a series called The First Disowned Child of the Gods. If you want to read that fanfiction, you can find it on Archive of Our Own or AO3. And let's jump right into the first chapter. Chapter 1. He was just another lost demigod, a familiar sight during my extended punishment. I had encountered countless individuals like him, all bearing the same sense of hopelessness that Percy Jackson had once exhibited upon his arrival. At least Percy, in the beginning, had been subdued, spending 3 days in a coma after facing a minotaur. It was the piercing blue eyes of the newcomer that caught my attention, reminiscent of someone powerful, someone I'd rather not think about, an uncle who wasn't supposed to be having an offspring. Yeah, I was weak, and the memory of the dim-witted demigod who may have fathered him lingered. "Excuse me, I'm Percy Jackson. I'm new here," he announced. "Peter Johnson is here." Annoyance flashed in those potentially dangerous oceanic eyes as the boy gave me an almost confused look. "Okay. That isn't really my name," he clarified. "I guess I'm looking for the office or whoever's in charge, so..." He trailed off, uncertainty evident in his voice, clearly navigating the unfamiliar terrain of this place. Grover, the goat satyr, stumbled forward, his usual nervous demeanor on display. He had informed me that this newcomer was powerful, conveniently leaving out the fact that he wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed, as he awkwardly introduced me, attempting to be as polite as possible for his friend. "Yeah, Grover, I heard him the first time," I muttered, tossing my sunglasses on the table. "Okay, but did you..." The defiant child interrupted with a hint of sass as Grover attempted once more to explain our world. I sighed and sipped my Diet Coke, secretly yearning for it to be wine. At least Grover seemed to be instilling some manners in the demigod. Percy, summoning his courage again, spoke up. "Excuse me, Your Highness?" I groaned at the title, wishing he would find the right words on his own. He glanced back and forth nervously. "I think my dad may be around here somewhere. I don't know how to ask for him. I don't even know his name, but I think I should see him," he admitted, a touch of sadness in his voice. I think I really need that right now." "Can you help me?" he pleaded. Frankly, none of that mattered to me. I don't care less about another whiny, needy brat. There were already too many at this camp. But then again, this could be an opportunity. Demigods possessed freedoms even the gods couldn't compete with. They could enter realms and break rules that Father Dearest had imposed on me. Perhaps Peter Johnson could help end this dry streak. "Actually," I interrupted, a sly smile forming, "I think I can," I continued. "Son." The demigod looked even more confused. "Dad?" "Yes, Peter. It's Percy," he mumbled. "Exactly," I said, intentionally forgetting his name as I prepared to lay out his peerless mission, to fetch me a bottle of wine, allowing me to drink without suffering any consequences when things inevitably went south. However, the little terror just stood there, unblinking and motionless. He wasn't slipping into madness. That was my domain. I would know. Snapping out of the trance, the boy walked toward me. I stood ready to hold my ground, expecting an attack. Instead, the kid burst into tears, a mix of anger and grief. I cringed, keeping my hands in the air, not wanting to touch him as he sobbed. Just as I was about to push him away, the demigod beat me to it, pulling back before weakly pounding against my chest. Torn between hugging and punching me, I felt more annoyed than guilty, not expecting Percy to be so emotionally charged. I regretted miscalculating that he might not be too keen on doing any favors for his deadbeat dad. "Where were you?" he shouted, his voice reaching as high as his lung could carry. "When Mom was kidnapped, didn't you care?" he sniffed. "And call it whatever you like, but I awkwardly patted the kid's back. Just once. I decided to let this moment of weakness slide, not because I felt bad, but because he was about to do me a favor. "Before we get to know each other," I said, taking a step back as he wiped the tears from his face, "there's something very important I want you to do for me, okay?" And Percy nodded, red on his cheeks as he attempted to pretend he hadn't been crying. "In the galley, there is a bottle of 1985 Chateau Haut-Brion. Will you go fetch that for me?" he requested, looking even more hurt. He nodded gloomily. "Is that really all you have to say to me?" he asked, looking at the ground. Grover tried to speak, but I held up my hand, not willing to give up this opportunity halfway through. I would not be cried on for no reason. But, Grover, quiet, please. This is a nice moment. Don't ruin it," I pointed out. "The galley is right down that path. Grab a bottle and I'll talk to you about whatever you want." Percy finished wiping away his tears, and Grover followed after him, giving me a baffled look but not fighting me. Percy returned just as fast, holding the bottle of wine I had been ungodly drooling over. He cradled it to his chest. "Pass it over, son," I told him, faking happiness. But the sneaky brat gave me a rebellious look. "Not until you tell me," he started, pushing my patience, "what I wanted to be whole again." "I don't care," I snapped at him. Percy, wide-eyed with shock, dropped my precious bottle of wine. As I was about to yell at the child, he gave me a look of horror, almost as if he were on autopilot. Stammering apologies, he attempted to clean up the spilled wine, but oddly enough it turned to water the closer he got to me. I signed into my hands. So close. Percy was still stuttering on the floor, trying to fix the mess. It was strange how quickly he switched from disobedient to cooperative. But I drew the line as he dropped to his knees to pick up the glass. I grabbed his wrist. "It's over, kid." "Sorry, Dad." It seemed the charade had run its course. "Oh, no, Mr. D isn't your father," Kieran declared. Percy, taken aback by his ex-teacher being a horse, almost missed the part about me not being his dad. If my father found out what I was attempting, I would be in trouble with him now, facing more time babysitting this helpless demigod. "I could be," I said, attempting to cover my tracks. "He is my son, Peterson Johnson," I claimed him. "Percy Jackson." "Hush, son." Kieran glared at me, his eyes locking onto mine. "Is that so?" He didn't believe me as he glanced at the wine slowly creeping toward me. However, he didn't call me out on it. I could sense that he already knew. Percy asked me about being claimed, looking up with puppy-like curiosity. It reminded me of my real claimed kids, Castor and Pollux. At least their constant pleas for a brother could stop. I hoped Percy's questions would end there. Unfortunately, they didn't. All for the price of no wine. Kieran gave me a stiff smile, conveying everything he wanted to say in one sentence. Congratulations on claiming your son. My eye twitched as Percy stared at me. I couldn't protest, so I would have to live this lie. At least humans didn't live that long. And demigods? I would stop seeing Percy in even less time. Percy's view. I felt foolish looking at the man who claimed to be my father. Emotions swirled within me. A delicate balance of anger, sadness, and a fleeting moment of happiness. Anger simmered because his divine status led to my mother's death, and he seemed indifferent. My broken vine appeared to concern him more than the loss of my mother. Sadness enveloped me as he showed no interest in knowing my name, simply tossing out names of past sons as if they were interchangeable. And finally, a brief moment of happiness, when he hugged me amidst the turmoil of my emotions. I entertained the thought that maybe he cared, but it was short-lived. He vanished, leaving me unsure if the hug, the acknowledgement as a son, held any genuine sentiment. It seemed unlikely that a god would want a troublesome child like me. Expelled from school rapidly, struggling with reading and grappling with so many issues. Mr. Brunner or Chiron broke the moment. Percy, I must speak to Mr. D. Grover, can you show him to his quarters, please? He glanced at Dad. It was meant to be Hermie's cabin, but as Percy's your son, you shall stay in cabin 12. I had countless questions, but there didn't seem to be time for answers. Meeting my father wasn't what I expected. He had a similar smell to Gabe, both unbothered by cleanliness of shaving, messy hair, and a shared fondness for alcohol. I refused to entertain the thought that my mom had a type for bad men. With Gabe Ugliano, I felt unsafe, small, uncertain he'd never want me to feel anything but. Dionysus, while making me feel small, had an anger that leaned more toward annoyance than cruelty, yet I knew it could change in an instant, and chaos would ensue. There was regret. I wished I had inherited my father's purple eyes. Instead, we looked nothing alike. Grover tried to maintain a one-sided conversation, but my mind was still reeling from the betrayal and overwhelmment of the newfound knowledge. I was a demigod, Grover a satyr, and my dad was the god of wine. It felt like getting hit with one hard truth after another. Percy? Yeah, G-Man? Grover didn't seem bothered that I wasn't fully engaged as he pointed towards the cabin adorned with vines and grapes. Instead of a typical cabin, it looked more like a college party house. Just if you ever need to talk. Thanks, Grover. I gave him an awkward wave, signaling our goodbye. I just wanted the conversation to end. I hoped this day would conclude like one of my many school days, yearning to be with my mom in a house of blue rather than with strangers who spoke ill of me behind my back and bullied me for being a bit different. Entering the cabin, I was immediately bombarded by my brothers, twins, with slight differences and a closer resemblance to Dionysus than to me. One had the same curly mass of hair, and the other had the sun-kissed complexion. Both sported the same pair of lavender eyes. "Peter," they said in unison. Yeah, Percy Jackson." It seemed their dad had already informed them. I expected envy or even bullying from stealing their dad's attention, but instead I was met with matching grins. "I'm Castor. I'm Pollux." He pointed to himself. "And I'm older." Castor playfully pushed his brother to the side. "No, you're not. Don't listen to him, Percy. Dad won't tell us who's older." He laughed, and I nervously rubbed my hand in my shirt, unsure of what to say. I certainly hadn't expected such a warm welcome to the cabin, and I continued to fumble with my shirt. "Don't worry, I won't get in your way," I joked, trying to gauge if there was any resentment. If there was, I was sure they would voice it in a teasing manner. Like, "Just don't get in our way." I made a mental note to stay out of each other's paths. I wanted brothers, having despised being an only child. If I had someone who was perhaps related to me, then it could have been the two of us against the world, but having that wish granted along with all this other stuff felt like bad timing. Castor and Pollux exchanged a glance, and that spoke more than words. "We're happy to have you, Percy," Pollux began. "The cabin is much too big for just the both of us," Castor finished. They eagerly showed me to my bed, all made with purple sheets, and a minotaur horn set on the side. Surprisingly, it provided a view of the ocean and a window that let in the salty breeze. Both Castor and Pollux waited for me to say something. "Thank you. It's nice," I said, and both boys smiled. "We don't usually do camp counselor activities or stuff, but now that you're here, we should try things out together." Castor suggested grabbing a small shovel for gardening. "Oh, do you like to garden?" Pollux asked. I thought of the little herb garden my mum used to take care of. Not a lot, but my mum did have a herb garden," I said, trying to contribute to the conversation. "Perfect. We'll answer all your questions. And garden for a bit." I wasn't sure which boy said what, but one of them threw an orange t-shirt at me. It was an improvement over my old clothes, so I put it on immediately. So far, having brothers didn't seem so bad. So I hope you enjoyed the first chapter, and I will see you next time.